This is History Myths and Misconceptions, and today's misconception is Ostracism. Ostracism is one of the most interesting features of classic Athenian democracy of the 5th century BC. Theoretically, it served as a safeguard against tyranny, but it also functioned as a way to remove from the political life of the state people who were sticking out too much. The main misconceptions about this practice arise mostly from, first of all, the fact that the word ostracism has entered many modern languages with a meaning that doesn't fully align with its original Athenian context. Today, to ostracize someone typically means to exclude someone from a group or to avoid someone. In everyday speech, it doesn't mean to, send someone to exile. Second, there's often a misunderstanding of the mechanics and implications of ostracism, which requires some insight into how Athenian democracy functioned and what citizenship meant to the Greeks. Ostracism was introduced in the early 5th century BC as part of the reforms attributed to Cleisthenes. Once a year, the popular assembly, ecclesia, would gather to vote on whether an ostracism should be held that year. This preliminary vote did not target any individual. It was merely a decision on whether the procedure was necessary. If the assembly decided in favor, a special session followed, during which each citizen could write the name of any person they believed should be banished for 10 years. The term ostracism derives from the Greek word ostrakon, which referred to a shard of pottery or a tile. These shards were used as ballots, with voters inscribing the names of those they wanted to exile. For an ostracism to be valid, a quorum of 6,000 votes was required. If no individual received the necessary number of votes, the process ended without anyone being ostracized. Now, we need to understand what was this popular assembly and how direct democracy worked. I've already made a video discussing Athenian democracy and how it differs from modern democracies, so I'll point you there for a deeper dive. But in short, any adult male citizen could vote, and any adult male citizen could propose a candidate. Direct democracy. If a person was ostracized, they were given 10 days to settle their affairs and leave Athens. The exiled individual retained their property and citizenship and could return after 10 years. As I mentioned earlier, ostracism wasn't always a tool to eliminate bad apples. Sometimes individuals were ostracized simply for standing out too much or being overly ambitious. The process was not immune to manipulation, and public opinion could be swayed, resulting in the banishment of people who posed a very debatable threat to the state. The most popular example of ostracism going wrong is the case of Aristides. Nearly every article or video about ostracism recounts the well-known anecdote about an illiterate voter asking Aristides to help him write a name on his ostrakon. The name, it turned out, was Aristides. Naturally, Aristides asked the man why he wanted to ostracize him. The voter replied that he was simply tired of hearing people constantly praise Aristides as the just for his integrity and greatness. Obviously, this is just an anecdote, but nonetheless, it is an anecdote that demonstrates the mindset of the average voter. Aristides likely became a casualty of his rivalry with Themistocles, the celebrated hero of the Battle of Salamis. Ironically, about a decade later, Themistocles himself was ostracized, effectively ending his political career in Athens. So he found a new job in Persia, the very same country which he helped to defeat at Salamis. They were very impressed with his CV. They needed more specialists like Themistocles. So yeah, if you're imagining that ostracism was a super effective tool for ejecting some really nasty populists who were working hard to establish tyranny, well, the reality was much more complicated and much more simple at the same time. Now, there's another reason why ostracism and exile were such a big deal. Apart from removing a person from political life for a decade, obviously. Exile effectively turned a person into an expat, a status that was far more challenging in ancient Greece than it is today. Most people in ancient Greece were deeply attached to their homeland, their polis. Naturally, there were quite a lot of people who lived outside their native land. Just like today, they faced numerous restrictions. For example, metics, foreign residents, were prohibited from owning property in Athens and had to rent instead. It's not that big of a restriction. There are a lot of countries today where, for example, you can't buy land if you're a foreigner. But overall, people didn't feel quite at home outside of their communities. Citizenship was a source of immense pride, and frequently it was nearly impossible to acquire citizenship in another polis. Here's an interesting anecdote about this. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, lived in Athens for decades and established a highly respected philosophical school there. He was so admired that the Athenians offered to grant him citizenship. However, Zeno declined, reasoning that he was already a citizen of Citium, a city on Cyprus, located in what is now Larnaca. It's worth noting that Athenian citizenship laws became significantly stricter after 451 BC, when Pericles introduced a notable change. Citizenship was granted only to individuals whose parents were both Athenians. This policy later backfired for Pericles himself. He had to appeal to the assembly for special permission to grant citizenship to his only surviving son, Pericles the Younger. The boy's mother, Aspasia, was originally from Miletus. As for ostracism, the practice gradually declined during the Peloponnesian War and was effectively abandoned by the 4th century BC. More accurately, it was replaced by a bit more sophisticated legal procedures. Thank you for watching. Please check out the Oedipus/Antigone visual novel game I made. It is available on Steam, link in the description. It's an adaptation of the Theban cycle of Sophocles. If ancient Greek tragedy isn't your thing, I also have another visual novel on the way. Space is Red, an old history sci-fi horror. The link is in the description as well. Thank you.